Shudder sold me a horror movie. What I got was Hellcat. No blood, no gore, no scares. Welcome to Scary World, where I walk you through the best, the worst, and the downright disturbing. I'm Arturo Padilla.
Hi.
Let's get into it. A woman wakes up in the back of a moving camper trailer with a wound she can't explain. A voice over the PA tells her they have 1 hour to reach a doctor or she'll suffer a horrific fate.
Why am I inside here?
You've been infected.
Holy shit.
You got less than an hour to get you to the doctor, if that.
The first category is production.
Told you I'd make a movie someday. Huh?
Hellcat was directed by Brock Bodell, and this is his feature film debut. Bodell is a former editor who spent years cutting commercials and features before he ever stepped behind a camera. You can see it in how this thing is assembled, which is a good thing and a bad thing. He knows what he wants from his framing and his composition though. He was able to take a rickety trailer bouncing down a back road and turn it into a pretty immersive environment. For most of this movie, we're stuck in one location. So the camera has to do the heavy lifting, and early on, it absolutely does. It establishes the landscape of the tiny space really well. Confined horror lives or dies on whether a camera can make 4 walls feel like a map, and fortunately, this one was able to do that. The issues start when we leave the confines of that trailer. This is where Bodell shows how green he is behind the camera. The exterior shots leave much to be desired. They don't have the same thought or quality behind them as the interior shots did. And it makes you wonder if this whole thing should have stayed inside that trailer. The exterior scenes don't really add anything, and everything could have been accomplished just as well inside that tiny space. And for that, Hellcat gets a 1 out of 2 for production. The movie does look good, and Bodell shows that he is competent behind the camera, but like I said, his interior shooting is way much better in contrast to his exterior shooting. The outside stuff looks very amateur, very unpolished, and I think he could have used some help with that. But again, if we had stayed inside that trailer, I believe we would have had a better movie overall. The next category is story.
Second act needs work.
Bodell wrote this one too, and this is where things fall apart. The story does do a nice job of throwing you into the thick of everything from the get-go. It's not a bad choice. The cold open is a bit chaotic and does engage you right away. But that only works if the movie is feeding you as you go, dropping breadcrumbs, giving you something to hold on to. Unfortunately, this one doesn't. There's not much to follow and even less to grab onto. You slowly have to start piecing everything on your own because the story does a very poor job of connecting the dots for you. And I want to be clear about the difference here, because people mix these up all the time. A movie that trusts you to keep up is doing something on purpose, but a movie that just doesn't bother explaining itself and hopes you'll do the work, that's not ambiguity, that's a poorly written story. I spent most of the runtime assembling a story the film should have been handing me, and when I finally get there, it was not worth the assembly at all. It's a shame because the concept had genuine potential. There's a version of this premise that absolutely gets it. A ticking clock, a locked trailer, an unreliable voice on the other end of a speaker. That's a great engine, and it totally falls flat on its face because the script starts the engine but then never puts it in gear. The dialogue doesn't help matters either. It's functional at best, and a whole lot of it is doing exposition work that the story should have earned on the screen. And every character but the lead is poorly written. They're more of a detriment to the story than they are useful pieces in a game of chess. And for that, Hellcat gets a 0 out of 2 for story. Man, this was a major bummer, a big letdown. You were hoping things would pick up as the movie goes, as the runtime goes, but nothing ever really happens. The screen shows you certain hints, certain things to keep in mind, and you're salivating at what's coming next, but there's nothing that happens here at all. And it's really unfortunate because, like I said, the premise is a cool one, but we never really go anywhere and we never really get that promise, what that premise was offering. The next category is ensemble.
She's an actress. She's acting.
This cast was not the best at all. The only positive was Dakota Gorman, who plays Lena, our lead. She carries the entire movie on her back and does a pretty solid job with the material she's given. She was good enough to have her do more on screen, and that's another problem I have with this movie. They didn't give their best performer enough to do. Unfortunately, none of the other characters land, but that's not really on the actors. That's on the direction given and the actual story itself. There's very little to work with here. You can't build a performance solely out of exposition. When your only job is to walk in and hand the lead a plot point, there's no character there to play. And for that, Hellcat gets a 1 out of 2 for Ensemble. It gets the 1 point for what Dakota Gorman did. I think she was pretty awesome in this movie, and I wish they would have given her more to do because she was capable of that, and we saw that on the screen. This story really lets her down and really lets her character down because there was room to play with here, and they just totally crapped the bed on that one. The next category is horror.
Is it scary?
Shudder sold us a bill of bad goods with this movie. The trailer sells a horror movie that isn't there. There's no blood, there's no gore, there's not much of anything. It's not even a tad bit scary. It wants to give you some scares, but just doesn't know how to. The premise is doing every bit of the work. You know something bad is supposedly happening, so your brain fills in the dread the movie never actually delivers. And for a movie that's built on something taking over a body, you'd expect at least one gnarly payoff. One shot that makes you sit up, and there's just nothing here. It flinches away from its own concept every single time. You cannot make a horror movie with no horror in it. That's the job. That's the whole job. Shame on you, Shudder, for leading us astray. This is not the first Fantasia pickup they've peddled as a good movie. Anyone remember Find Your Friends? Yeah, that's not what you want at all. And for horror, Hellcat gets another 0 out of 2. Man, what a waste of time in this department. This movie promised us something cool, at least some kind of transformation, some kind of something. But we don't get any of that. You are waiting 90 minutes for something to happen and nothing ever does. And again, that goes back to the story. But when it comes to this department, they completely crap the bed again and don't give us anything at all that's worth chewing on. The last category is legacy.
All right, now make up your mind.
Hellcat is not a good movie. Almost every aspect fell flat on its face. The story didn't go far enough, if anywhere at all, and the premise, which is the one thing that got me in the door in the first place, was a major letdown. And that ending is polarizing, to say the least. Some might call it bold. I'd call it a fart in the wind. It doesn't pay off one single thing you sat through to get there. It's quite frustrating because you're holding on for this thing to get engaging and it lets you down at every turn. And that's why nobody's gonna be talking about this in 6 months. There's no scene to clip, no kill to point at, no performance to champion, and no ending that gives anybody a reason to post about. It's going to sit in a row of thumbnails on a streamer and get scrolled right past all the time. The frustrating part is that the talent is clearly in there. Director Brock Bodell can shoot a movie. There's a good filmmaker somewhere in this. He just needs someone to write him a good script. And for legacy, Hellcat gets another 0 out of 2. This was a complete waste of time, I'm sorry to say. I wish there was something engaging, at least in the second half of the movie, but there's really nothing there at all. They keep teasing you and teasing you and teasing you, and you're just waiting for something to happen on the screen, and you're gonna keep waiting because there's nothing there. I watched it hoping something gnarly or brutal would happen, but nothing ever does.
Task. Can you tell me what time it is?
Now it's time to add it all up. For production, Hellcat got a 1. For story, it got a 0. For ensemble, it got a 1. For horror, it got a 0. And for legacy, it got another 0. Bringing the total to a 2 out of 10. Yikes, that's not what you want from Shudder. They have been leading us astray a lot this year, and I just wish they would curate these movies better. I'm curious if they're even watching this before they approve it, because there are some movies on this platform that just don't deserve to be there. And funny enough, if this movie appeared on Tubi, I would be a little bit more lenient with it because it's Tubi. But here on Shudder, the horror genres platform, we are getting a lot of garbage recently, and this is part of it, unfortunately. Hellcat has 2 things going for it. It looks good, and Dakota Gorman is doing some nice work in the middle of it, but that's about it. The story never connects its own dots, the concept never gets out of first gear, and the supporting cast has nothing to play with. And for a horror movie, it forgot to bring any horror at all. Stay away from this one, but for those who are curious, this is streaming on AMC Plus and Shudder. I'm Arturo Padilla, and remember, it's a scary world out there, but I am here to walk you through it. See you next time.
Hello, I just wanted to say goodbye.